بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا ما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. Mother Juwayria radiallahu anha, she was originally a prisoner of war and she was trying to get her freedom, and she came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, she was trying to buy her freedom from the Prophet ﷺ offered her that he set her free and marry her, and she accepted. And now, one of the things that Aisha notices, subhanAllah, often Aisha radiallahu anha is our, she's a narrator of about 1/3 of all hadiths. I mean, maybe that's somewhat of a hyperbole, but she narrates a lot of hadiths. So Aisha radiallahu anha is this view that we have onto the life of the Prophet ﷺ. Right? She narrates a lot of hadith and a lot of knowledge was spread from her. And so she makes this point, Aisha, she said, Juwayria was very, very good looking. And she was one of these people, when they walk around, men notice. And Aisha said, I saw what she was doing. She was coming to ask people to help her gather money to buy her freedom. And I really didn't want her to come and knock on the door of the Prophet ﷺ because that's my husband. I didn't want my husband to see her, right? And so the question is, did the Prophet ﷺ marry her for her looks? Is that possible? That the Prophet ﷺ basically used his political and social power to kind of manipulate people and just gather beautiful women as his wives? Is that possible? It's certainly humanly possible. It's certainly possible in history. But is it possible in his capacity as a prophet? Did the Prophet ﷺ ever do that? And the answer is no, and then no, and then no. The Prophet ﷺ was not a worldly person. The Prophet ﷺ was not somebody who abused his role. The Prophet ﷺ was not somebody who was interested in accumulating things, right? But rather, as we shall see, the Prophet ﷺ surrounded himself with women of tremendous merit, right? Tremendous merit. And so here, there's this amazing dua that she is the reason for us knowing. She was making dhikr, radiallahu anha. Juwayria, Ummuna Juwayria, she was making dhikr after Fajr for a long time. The Prophet ﷺ came by and saw her, and she was there making dhikr, saying subhanallah, making dua, etc. And then he went and did some things, and then he came hours later, right? Hours later, an hour, 2, 3, 4 hours later, right? It's nearly dhuhr. And he said, are you still here? And she said, yes, I'm still here. I'm still making dhikr for hours. And the Prophet ﷺ said, shall I not teach you some mighty words that are so great that they would outweigh everything you have said all morning, right? Something you can say in a few seconds. And if you say this will outweigh all of the dhikr that you have done all morning. And she said, of course, right? And so the Prophet ﷺ, he taught us this dua, right? To say, Subhanallahi adada khalqih, thalath marrat. To say, glory be to Allah. How utterly beyond description and comprehension is Allah. That's what subhanallah means. For everything that He ever created, right? Count every single thing that He ever created and ever will create, and say subhanallah for that. And you say that 3 times. Subhanallahi zinata arshi, right? Glorified beyond description is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for every gram of His throne, right? And His throne, as we know, is the greatest thing ever, right? The Prophet ﷺ said, if you took the whole universe, lock, stock and barrel, and compared it to the kursi, the footstool of His throne, it would be like a dot in an ocean. Literally, he said a ring in a big desert. And you took His kursi, the footstool of His throne, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't put His feet, Allah doesn't have feet. He doesn't put His feet on things, but it means the footstool of His throne. And you compared that to His arsh, to the throne itself, it would be like a ring in a huge desert. It would be nothing, right? And that's the rhetoric of the verse of Surah Ayat al-Kursi. وَسِعَ كُرْسِيُّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Even the dot on his throne is bigger than the universe. That's what it says. The smallest part of his throne is bigger than the whole universe. Right? So you say, glorified beyond description, how utterly beyond description, for every single ounce, every single gram of the weight of his throne. 3 times. Subhanallahi rida nafsi. Right? Glorified be Allah until He is content, which will be forever. Subhanallahi midada kalimati. 3 marrat. Right? And O Allah, and glory be to Allah until the last of His words, which will never end. Right? So forever and ever and ever. So we just say these words. This is what the Prophet taught Juwayria. Right? And this is what Juwayria was, the haqiqah of it, or the reality of what she was. And so, this is just a sign of that. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.